Hello, everybody. It's Mary Alice here, and thanks for joining us at the Story of the Future Summit, online summit. And this is our bonus section, and I love this section because we get to talk to some very cool people doing some really amazing stuff. And today we're going to be going with a bit of innovation, creativity, playfulness, and responding to whatever happens in the moment. Because I'm here in Ohio, and they've decided to chop down the trees behind my place and chip them up in the front. And Roy is sitting at Emerson College in one of the rooms there, and you never know what's going to walk in that kind of a place. So we're just asking you to be with us in this really innovative and playful session and see where we go, which is kind of cool. So I want to introduce you to Roi Gal-Or, who is one of the people at the School of Storytelling at Emerson College in the UK, which is in Sussex. And this school has been teaching people the beauty and the depth of story for quite some time. So we want to hear a little bit about that. And Roy also is the founder of an initiative called Healing Words. So we're going to talk a little bit about story as a healing medium and how that can work and how you can think about it. So Roy, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of the summit.
Pleasure. And thank you for the invitation. And I look forward to see what will happen today with the chopping trees and the possibility of people walking into the room now.
You never know.
Let the fun begin.
Woo!
Hey.
So one thing I'm really interested in, of course, humans are storytellers, so it's kind of inbred in us, but how do you come to the pathway of really embracing story as something you're doing most of the time and as the focus of your life?
I think I had no choice. That's the answer. That was just totally meant to be. Sometimes people ask me this question, and I say the shortest answer is it's because I didn't become a doctor. But that's also the truth, because when I was in my early 20s, I was on a pathway to become a medical doctor. I started with a medical training. And it was 1994, I was 21 years old, and I was sent to participate in a humanitarian field hospital in Rwanda in Africa during the time of the genocide there. And together with a very small medical team, with very few other aid groups around us, we worked in a situation of probably the closest I can imagine to what hell looks like. And at the end of 2 weeks, we had to be replaced by another group because almost all of us were completely broken on a soul level. So I've witnessed the kind of horrific things that human beings can inflict on each other in a time of war. And it was very clear to me that I couldn't become a conventional medical doctor. There was a burning question in my soul after that experience. Which had to do, at the time I phrased it around social healing. So I wanted to find a way to deal with the root causes of war rather than put bandages on wounds. In that case, it was machetes that the people were fighting with, the two tribes. So I left the medical pathway and went searching. And I went traveling. I visited lots of schools, ashrams, traveled in Southeast Asia, various spiritual traditions and teachers. And as I was traveling, it kind of dawned on me that everybody I met was a story, was conditioned by their stories. So I realized how everything is made of stories. And as they say, the destiny of our planet depends on the stories that we tell, that we believe, that we follow. So it became clearer that if I want to make a difference, if I want to change, if I want to help people change, if I want to bring any kind of healing, I have to address the great shapers of humanity, which are stories. I have to work with them. I have to address that issue. So at the end of some searching, I ended up coming to Emerson College, to the School of Storytelling. That was in 2001, and I've never left. In storytelling, I find the possibility of both healing and educating and expanding vision and creating a more hopeful narrative for the future. So it really feels like some kind of storytelling is like a master key that can open almost any door, helped me so far face almost every situation, including some difficult ones in places of conflict. Yeah.
The chipping is going on. That's why I've been putting myself on mute a little bit. So I'll come in with my sound ambience. It's interesting when you think of, I think a story can be the key to the door, but it also can be a prison.
It can also be a prison, absolutely.
Yes. So what's the difference between these two things? How do you actually realize that your story has got you stuck? Like, this isn't all of reality. There's something else I want it to be. And then what do you do with it? So how do you come to that point of awareness first of, wait a minute, here's the thing, and then how do you start to shift it?
That's a great question. In my experience, in many cases, people don't necessarily realize that. So lots of people just keep trapped. They stay trapped in a jail and relive and retell themselves a story that doesn't serve them. So how do people wake up is a great question. I know that sometimes, in many cases, thinking of the people I work with who do wake up, it's pain. It's just meeting a very, very difficult experience where, it can be the death of someone dear to you. It can be the collapse of a marriage or a crisis or any of the misfortunes that can happen and do happen to human beings as we walk this earth. That makes you stop and question everything. So I think a little crack needs to appear in the certainty. And when the crack appears in the certainty, there's a possibility, there's a chance to wake up. It's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that you will come out of jail, but there's a possibility. And I think as humanity now, we're in a moment where the crack is right in our face. So I think that's why we can see so many people are waking up, more and more people questioning the narrative. It's the narrative around us, the consensus, the consensual reality is a painful one for many, many people. And in this way, we can say it's both bad and painful, and it can contain the seeds of possibility, and something good may come out of it. One of the ways of phrasing it, which I sometimes use when I work with people in biographical storytelling, is the difference between why does it happen to me to why does it happen for me. So if
great reframe.
Yeah. So if you're painful, because we face reality, and we often find ourselves in situations where it seems like we can't change anything. We're too small, or it's beyond us, or so maybe the only freedom we have is to change how we look at it and say, instead of just taking everything as a victim, say, so what is the possibility? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And again, I think just by shifting an angle, shifting the perception, there's a possibility to wake up, to change the story, to change your story, to change the reality. And if you can't change the reality or the story, change how you see reality in a way that serves you.
Just listening to you say that has made me just have a question pop into my mind, if maybe life has got the idea of throwing us these crack-making moments, for want of a better word, in order to provide a platform for a leap forward, so that maybe from an evolutionary point of view, they're necessary. It makes me wonder. I haven't thought about that before, but I'm thinking, maybe we need to experience the really deep emotion in order for something to shift. So what I would call the Leonard Cohen moment, the crack where the light comes in thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And And what if, that's a question that many storytellers love. uh, what if it was we ourselves who actually threw these obstacles in our way so we can grow and develop? We don't have to believe in it, that this is the truth, but what if? And if we narrate or choose to narrate that it's actually this conflict, this challenge, this difficult situation I'm in, what if I've placed it, somewhere from another plane in my future to meet me and welcome me at this point, so I can grow, so I can develop for the benefit of humanity, people around me and myself. In my experience, when people are able to at least consider it as an imaginative possibility, not as a reality, though some spiritual traditions say that this is the reality. So it's actually a higher self that walks ahead of us and calculates and prepares the schooling experience that we need to go through. But even if we just take it as an imaginative exercise, we can take ownership a little bit more of what's happening to us and realize, yes, okay, this is coming, it's in our hands. What are we going to make of it? Can we make something better? Can we make something sweet?
It seems that humans kind of play in that field between pleasure and pain, and so you can learn a lot through pain, but I think you also have taken the tact of you can learn a lot from being playful. Yes. So how does being playful help you move your story on or work with story?
Without the playfulness, it would just be too sad and too difficult and too challenging. So, when I came out after that experience of Rwanda, I stood in a junction and I had the choice. I could have just lost faith in humanity altogether. Or I could have, which is what I did, I asked myself, so why did this happen for me? What can I make of this experience for the benefit of humanity and others? I think just entertaining these kind of thoughts is already more fluid and playful. So it's not just it's not a linear one way. To have fun, to laugh is absolutely essential for bearing this impossible, it's just an impossible experience to be a human being. It's really tough sometimes. And it's confusing, and nobody gave us the text of what we're supposed to say on this earth. We're improvising constantly.
Yeah, where's the instruction manual? I always say that.
Where is it?
This body, where's the instruction manual? Oh, you're sitting in a college. Have you got the copy? Did somebody only give you the copy and they forgot to give me the copy? That was.
There's only an eraser here.
That's good.
Yeah, and a pig. But it's a beginning of a new story. Yeah. So yeah, playfulness is essential, I think, for us to be able to go deep and address the challenges that we are facing without losing hope. And I think playfulness is also a door to possibility and creativity. Children do it all the time naturally, and we were all children, and we all have inside of us that child who once saw my daughter when she was little. She used to eat a rice cracker and take a bite and look at the shape, and she would say things like, "Now it's a camel, now it's a boat, now it's a king sitting on a throne." So that flexibility of mind is exactly where we can find solutions to impossible challenges. This is imagination. This is the gift of imagination, really. Playfulness and imagination are connected. And also, one last thought about playfulness is it also provides us an opportunity to be with each other in a way which we're usually not, sadly, in many circles, in many places. So be it in the corporate environment or college of teachers, or the people who have certain habitual ways of being with one another, you can argue that you're just revealing and showing a tiny percentage of who you are, and you're following very often ways of behavior that you didn't choose or agree on. And any invitation to play just shakes the pot, and you start seeing each other better.
Yeah, there's more possibility when you don't have to be a certain way, when there's not a right way to do something, when you can, you know, I love that framing of, this is only an experiment.
Yes.
You don't have to be perfect right now. Yay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you can breathe straight away when you hear someone saying something like that. So, and this is sorry.
Where do you think we got so serious as a humanity?
When was it for you? You don't strike me as a too serious person, but when if there was like a little bit of seriousness that crept in at a certain point.
Yeah. For me, I think it was about 13 when I kind of realized I didn't fit the usual mold, and you were supposed to look a certain way and behave a certain way. And I left elementary school, where I felt like I was very in charge of my universe, and then suddenly I was not. But as I'm listening to other people who've measured these kind of things, especially with drawing, and I don't know if anybody's done that with storytelling, but with drawing, it seems to be about age 8 or 9 when people stop thinking that they can draw anything, or they say, I can't draw, or they've had that experience where they get told it's not, this is wrong.
Yeah. Along the way, I trained in a Waldorf Steiner education. And in this form of education, they actually mentioned then a certain crisis around the 9th year, which has to do with a metaphorical fall from paradise. It has to do with the realization of this world is fragmented, it's broken, there's separation. Often in children's biography, this is the time where they can fully understand the concept of death in a way that they couldn't understand it before. So I think it's when, I mean, obviously it will be a different answer for every individual when it happens. But in my experience, in biographies, it happens, if not before the 9th year, it happens by the 9th year. And one of the things that I'm using in my work in conflict places is actually exactly this story trigger. So this question that you've asked, why, when have we become more serious, or why, how did it creep in? I phrase it when I invite people to have a story swap with the other side, with an enemy, the work I'm doing in Palestine and Israel, so which brings Palestinians and Israelis together. I asked them to share, can you go back to a time in your life when you realized that this world was not perfect, when it was, when there was first realization of war or death or separation? And the stories that people tell are amazing in terms of both the content, but also in terms of how much empathy they draw from the listeners. Because when you listen to these stories, you just listen to the stories of aching children. And you no longer see the enemy in front of you, you just see an aching child. And you know that you went through a similar experience, and your children will go or have gone through this experience. And so it just opens the door to thinking, how can we make this world a better place? Yes, we fell from paradise, we've separated, and it's in our hands to turn this place into a garden again. Yeah, maybe we can.
So when did that kind of, you know, it sounds like the seeds of that were in the experience in Rwanda, but you also grew up in Israel, so there would be the awareness of these conflicting sides and conflicting stories around the same place. So when did you know that was part of your work?
I think from an early age, I was concerned about my personal biographical memory had happened around the 9th year when there was a big explosion in our neighborhood. And I discovered that behind the fence, very close to the playground where I grew up as a child, under the ground, the army was developing bombs and ammunitions because of that accident. As children, you know, we saw windows shattering in our neighborhood and a cloud of dust rising, and it was then that we heard the adults, the grown-ups, whispering. And yeah, so I think just around that age, it was clear that I had to do something around that. Yeah. Also, having gone through the army myself, the army experience myself, and certainly after Rwanda, it was clear that, yeah. So there's a moment where at a certain point in my biography, I went through a big heart surgery, and so that was in England, and I went back to Israel to recover. It was 2006, and I hoped to recover in the sun, under the warmth of the sun, and join some friends. And there was a moment when I was under the sun, and all of a sudden, the second Lebanon war started. So 2006, missiles were fired from both sides, and what was supposed to be a peaceful recovery turned into finding myself in a war environment. And I had a very special encounter during one evening during this period where we were told that we can't go outside of the house. We're supposed to stay indoors because missiles and rockets fell very, very close to where I was in the north of Israel. One evening, some friends challenged me to go to the Arab village 15 minutes down the road from us and bring an Arab sweet called knafe. It's a delicious sweet made of cheese and shredded dough, something really, really delicious. And they challenged me to go there, and I went there. And I had an encounter with an Arab man in the middle of this war, in the middle of this craziness. And I ended up telling him a story in this little shop. And he heard my story, and he smiled and he laughed, and humanity came back to the room. And he treated me as a free gift. He said, take this knafe, and he said, one day, inshallah, with the help of Allah, we people will solve things in this way between us. And so that was also another moment where I kind of knew that this is the way. In the middle of war, when we little people ask ourselves, what can we do? A little story, eye to eye, heart to heart, can bring us back to our humanity. And because of that encounter, the work that I'm doing in Israel, Palestine, and lots of other places and circles started, the one that I call Healing Words. So it's a longer story, and you can read it on my website if you want. But it's a very moving story, and that man really gave me a gift beyond the sweet that he gave me. He actually gave me fire to trust in humanity and trust in story again. Yeah.
Wow, what a gift! That's a bittersweet than the sweet, really. Something to, because it's not work that's going to change everything like that, is it? It's longer. It's the work of the patient gardener, isn't it? You never know if you're going to see the flowers blooming or the trees you've planted.
No. But you know, I have great trust in seeds, and my number one passion before storytelling is actually gardening and planting seeds. Yeah, it's beautiful. You have to trust. You have to also acknowledge that it's not you doing the work. That there is a certain story happening, and you can just take care of the seeds. So we're players in a great big happening, and the moment where we wake up as humanity, I think, is written in the stars. It's not guaranteed, but there's a possibility. And at the same time, it's in our hands. So it's both there and it's here. So plant some seeds, positive seeds.
Yeah, I remember speaking with a Swedish friend of mine who's a fika lover. Fika is not a coffee break, but a Swedish tradition where you gather and have conversation. And I remember asking her, could fika save the world? Kind of like, could storytelling save the world? And she said at the time, bring world peace. I said, could fika bring world peace? And she said, it might not bring world peace, but it could make more peaceful people, and they could bring world peace. So I'm wondering, you know, can storytelling bring world peace? Or Do we just need to be agents of it?
I think storytelling, the more we do this, the more human humans we will become.
Mm-hmm.
Storytelling, of course, I mean, the kind of storytelling that restores humanity, not the kind of story, the story that fragments humanity. Because you mentioned the jail, and we spoke. So we know that stories are used by the goodies and the baddies. They're used to manipulate, and they're used to twist the truth and hide the truth. So, but this is not the kind of storytelling that we're talking about in this summit. I think it's clear that we're trying to cultivate another garden. We're tending a different kind of fire. But yeah, the opposing forces are using very similar tools. Yeah.
So if somebody was listening to this who maybe hasn't done a lot of storytelling or doesn't consider themselves to be a storyteller, or wonders, what can I do in my own little corner that I'm in? What would your advice be?
What can I do for...
In the corner that I'm in my little part of the world? You know, I might not consider myself a world player or somebody who's moving on a global level, or even somebody who's traveling a lot, but is there something I can do where I am right now?
I think the first thing is to find your question or your quest. So the word quest and the word question are related. And I don't know if everybody is meant to serve in the same way. Well, I'm kind of convinced that we're not meant to serve in the same way. And I don't even know if we're all meant to be storytellers in this kind of way. We need nurses, but we can all tell stories. We all share stories. So but it's a matter of finding your call, finding how to serve. So how do you find your call? It's also, I think it's an individual thing. Some people find it sitting under a tree and listening. Other people just need to go for a walk. Other people need to talk to a friend. I think the main thing is to keep the question alive and pay attention. So the great mystery, this unfolding story that we participate in, I believe that it throws hints in that, you know, it should be around you. So just to pay attention and keep the question alive. Pay attention and keep the question alive. And notice the passion. So follow the passion. We run here at Emerson at Emerson College. We run a course, a 3-month course called Storytelling Beyond Words, which is some kind of a training for activists and storytellers and people who want to serve. And we spend the first 3 weeks of the course, of the 3 months, just listening and working on subtle awarenesses of how do I listen? How do I listen to myself? How do I listen to another person? In order to find that calling. So we do meditative practices and conversational practices and visualizations of various kinds, taking the question, you know, how am I meant to serve? What can I do? Close your eyes, take it on a journey. Go somewhere in your imagination. So we sometimes introduce helpers of various kinds. Go and meet the old wise storyteller, or the wise woman or wise man who's waiting for you at the end of your journey, the one you already are in a way, just walking towards that one. And ask for their guidance. So these are just some of the ways to do that. But I think the listening is the key thing, because there's a lot of activism that we see in the world and lots of actions that people take with the best intention that I feel are not always thought through and not always, it's the kind of difference between more sacred activism, delicate activism, and kind of impulsive activism, which sometimes comes from strong emotions.
So it's a nice advice to think, slow down, listen deeply, pay attention. Maybe be patient.
Yes, patience, and also not to know, because to hold the not knowing. Yeah. Because if I can't hold the not knowing, and I just grab the first thing that I find is my way of serving. You know, someone makes a suggestion or something like that. If it's not mine, it will not work. If it's not what you're really meant to follow. So patience and slowing down. Thank you. This is absolutely key.
It's kind of, given you said your first passion is gardening, it's kind of making me think, okay, be the patient gardener of yourself. You know, what if you looked at yourself as the garden? What would you see, and what would you do in order to help that garden be really fruitful and grow, be bountiful?
What I love about gardening is the silence. So spending my days with chatty storytellers and doing a lot of blah 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 myself. Not always knowing, not always, improvising, as we said earlier. We don't always have our text. Sometimes just saying things and trying them out, and waiting for. When I'm surrounded by the noble silence of the leeks in my garden, that's when I breathe. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's something we can wish everybody who's listening, is a bit of noble silence, whether they find it with a leek or a tree or somewhere else. In the presence of others or alone, may you find that and find some really deep listening and healing in the stories that are coming to you to be shared and to be worked with. Thank you, Roi, for being part of our online summit, and thank you all for listening. And I just want to invite you, if you've had some thoughts from this conversation, to please bring them to the Facebook group and share them with us. We'd really love to hear what this conversation has sparked in you. And please keep sharing your stories, right?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. There's a little gift that I wanted to offer my listeners and people who watch this. If you go on my website, which is my name, roigalor.com, and just sign up for my email list. I'll do a little draw from between the people who sign, and 2 people will receive a 1-hour coaching session with me to talk about either stories or finding a vision or listening or a shift that you'd like to bring into your life and world. So I invite you to do that.
Thank you very much, Roi. And thank you all for listening.